Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're looking at a single piece of source material sent in by you, the learner. It's called Photography Notes, Part 221, From Technical Flaw to Narrative Focus. And this is, it's not just a review, it's more of a post-analysis of one specific moment, one photograph of a flower hornfish.
Exactly. We're dissecting that moment when a photographer's plan for technical perfection just completely falls apart.
Right, because of real-world limits.
Mm-hmm.
And we want to see how they pivoted, how they leaned into an imperfection, this SLD text on the tank, to actually tell a better story.
It's all about decision-making under pressure, and the context, I think, is what makes it so relatable.
Oh, absolutely. This wasn't some high-end studio shoot.
No, not at all. It was just a field trip to a regular fish store, a fast-moving fish, a flawed environment.
Okay, so let's unpack that initial frustration. What was the original plan? Well, the photographer's goal was pretty classic, almost documentary.
It was. They wanted a super sharp close-up portrait of this flower horn.
And they wanted to eliminate everything distracting.
Everything. The notes specifically mention that S-old text on the glass and also these black and red plastic filters that were visible inside the tank. A totally clean shot.
The quest for, visual perfection.
Well, then the reality hits. The subject, the fish, it's not a willing model.
Yeah.
The notes say it was darting left and right, super erratic. It could sense the camera right away.
So that swift movement just made the whole pristine goal impossible from the start.
Instantly. You just can't force a perfect static composition onto a subject that's, alive and uncooperative.
And this is where it gets really interesting for me. Because instead of just giving up, deleting the shots,
I pivoted.
a complete conscious shift in approach. They stopped fighting the SLD text and decided to actually frame the shot with it.
And that's the genius of it. That text goes from being a mistake, a distraction, to what the notes call a contextual anchor.
Okay, I like that term, a contextual anchor.
Yeah, think about it. A photo of a pretty fish is just a photo of a pretty fish. But a photo of a beautiful fish framed by a sold sign, now you have a story. It's about a transaction. It's about ownership. This fish has a destination.
That's a really powerful distinction. But it does raise a question, doesn't it? If you start integrating flaws, do you risk your work just becoming messy over time?
That's a great point, a very insightful one. And based on these notes, the answer is a clear no.
Why?
Because the pivot was born out of necessity, not, let's say, aesthetic laziness. The fish was moving too fast. He couldn't frame it out.
So it was a narrative choice forced by the situation.
Precisely. And we know this because the analysis doesn't stop there. After getting the narrative shot, the photographer immediately goes back and critiques the technicals.
Right. That's the part that I think is so valuable for you, the learner. That willingness to say, okay, the story works, but my craft was still lacking.
Absolutely. The photographer did this really rigorous self-critique, pointing out 3 specific things that better manual control would have fixed.
Even while keeping the SLD sign in the shot.
Yes. And these are things that apply to almost any kind of action photography.
Okay, so let's get into them. Let's start with depth of field. This is something that I think trips a lot of people up, the whole aperture and background blur relationship.
It can be confusing.
Yeah.
So the phone's camera shot this at an aperture of f2.2.
Good.
The critique says the better choice would have been a wider aperture, specifically f1.8.
And here's the counterintuitive part, right? A smaller number, f1.8, actually means a wider opening for the lens.
Exactly. The F number is a ratio, so smaller number, wider aperture. And a wider aperture is what gives you a shallower depth of field.
Which in plain English means?
It means you get that beautiful, soft, blurry background, what we call bokeh.
Right.
So by shooting at f1.8, the fish would stay sharp, but those ugly plastic filters in the back, they would have just melted away into a sort of abstract wash of color.
So you're solving a composition problem with a technical setting. You're using focus to declutter the background.
That's it. It's a very elegant solution.
That is a huge takeaway. Okay, what was next on the technical hit list?
Detail number 2 is all about shooting through glass. So we're talking clarity, glare, and color saturation.
Which brings us to the CPL filter, the circular polarizing lens.
Yes. The notes say the photographer tried to use a digital CPL effect, but the result was, and I'm quoting, rather minimal.
I think most of us associate CPLs with, landscape shots.
Yeah.
Making the sky a deeper blue or cutting through reflections on a lake.
And shooting through aquarium glass is basically the same principle.
Because it's all about polarized light.
It is. When light bounces off a reflective surface like glass, it creates glare. A CPL filter works like a set of blinds filtering out that specific kind of light.
Okay.
So if a strong CPL effect had been used here, two big things would happen. First, the glare on the tank glass would have been cut way down.
Letting you see through the glass more clearly.
Exactly. And second, at the same time, a CPL boosts color saturation.
Yeah.
That blue background would get richer, and the reds and oranges on the fish would just pop.
So it cleans up the image and makes it more vibrant.
It does both. It's a huge tool for clarity and for aesthetics.
Man, what a miss. I mean, without good color and with all that glare, this story can get lost so easily.
It really can. And that brings us to the third point, which is really the root of the whole problem.
Motion blur and shutter speed.
The direct result of that fast-moving fish.
So the camera on auto chose a shutter speed of 150th of a second.
Which feels just agonizingly slow for this.
The notes say it was far too slow.
And it was. At 150th, any little movement from that fish is going to create blur. The image looks soft, smeared. You lose all that beautiful detail.
So what's the fix? What's the number we should be thinking of?
The fix is to increase the shutter speed to at least 125th of a second, or even faster.
Okay, 100 to 125th is a baseline.
That's a good baseline for freezing, say, moderate human movement. For a small, fast subject like a fish, you'd ideally want to be at 1250th, maybe even 1500th to be safe.
But wait, if you tell the learner to just crank up their shutter speed, we have to talk about the trade-off, right?
The big trade-off. Absolutely.
Because a faster shutter speed means less time for light to hit the sensor, which is a huge problem in a dimly lit fish store.
It's the inevitable compromise of photography. It's that dance. To get a good exposure with a fast shutter, you have to compensate.
How?
You've got two choices. Either open the aperture wider, which we already talked about with f1.8, or you increase the ISO.
Then increasing the ISO makes the sensor more sensitive to light,
But it introduces digital noise, that grainy look, so you have to make a choice.
a sharp photo with a little grain or a blurry photo that's clean.
And in action photography, sharp almost always wins. But that whole dance aperture, shutter, ISO, it has to be done manually, and it has to be done fast or the shot's gone.
It's just incredible. So much thought has to go into a moment that lasts, what, a fraction of a second. So how does this whole analysis, the narrative win, but the technical self-critique, how does that translate into something you can use?
Well, connecting it to the bigger picture, it just reinforces how critical it is to master your manual controls, even on a phone.
Especially on a phone.
The notes admit, a big professional camera might have solved these problems more easily, but that's not the point. The point is to maximize the gear you have with you.
Because your automatic mode is just going to fail in a situation like this.
It hits a wall. The second you have a fast subject, bad light, Reflections auto mode just can't prioritize for you. Only manual control lets you decide what's important. Is it depth of field? Is it freezing motion? You have to make that call.
And there's this feeling throughout the notes of constant practice. The photographer isn't just shooting on big assignment.
No, not at all. It's about treating a trip to the grocery store or a walk around the block as a chance to practice.
Turning every little moment into a learning opportunity.
And that really gets to the core question you should be asking yourself. What's the goal of this picture? When is it okay for it to be technically imperfect?
And when does the story not just allow for that imperfection, but actually need it?
Exactly. The fact that the photographer pivoted to the story and then went back to analyze the technicals, that shows a commitment to both. The story doesn't excuse sloppy craft.
It's that pursuit of professional refinement. And I love the final mantra from the notes. It's just so encouraging.
A captured shot is always better than no shot at all.
Yes. Don't let the fear of getting it wrong stop you from telling the story. This has been just a fascinating deep dive. We've gone from the frustration of trying to get a perfect shot of a fish to a technical failure to a narrative success by, leaning into that SLD sign.
And hopefully you're walking away with some really concrete, actionable knowledge. You understand the role of aperture using f1.8 for that bokeh effect. You know that 125th of a second is your starting point for freezing motion.
And you get why a CPL filter is so critical for cutting glare and boosting color when you're shooting through glass.
Those three things alone will dramatically improve your photography in tricky situations.
Well, thank you for sharing these notes with us. It's amazing how much we can pull from one photo of one fish in a tank.
And that leaves me with a final provocative thought for you to take with you. If our technical limits are often what force us to find the most creative, story-rich solutions, does striving for technical perfection actually sometimes get in the way of us telling a truly compelling story?